looking, throwing in the end zone. Caught it! Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today, yes, we will be getting to the 49ers full schedule release with wins and losses and explanations for each game. But before that, there were some recent signings and releases, some roster moves that the 49ers made. Wanted to discuss that, the impact on the 90-man roster, potential practice squad, and if any of these players can make the 53-man roster. There's only one unsigned rookie. It is first-round pick wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. Have some thoughts there. Notes from Pro Football Focus regarding top-ranked units in the league and the 49ers breakout candidate per Pro Football Focus. Jared Goff, quarterback of the Lions, getting a huge extension. What that means for Brock Purdy, and then we will dive into the schedule. There will be no plus content this week since schedule release is so big for everyone, but there will be plus content next week. But without further ado, like always, it's going to start and end with the 49ers this week, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
So let's start with some recent signings and releases. Most recently, the 49ers signed offensive tackle Chris Hubbard to a one-year, $1.375 million deal. Not sure how much of that is guaranteed since the contract was signed so recently. Those numbers have not been updated or shared. But regarding Hubbard, 33 years old, a 10-year veteran, 6'4", 295, had 9 starts with the Titans last season. At right tackle, allowed 4 sacks, 18 pressures on 473 total snaps. 292 of those snaps were pass blocking snaps. He received a 69 grade from Pro Football Focus. Overall, Hubbard has appeared in 94 games with 58 starts for the Steelers, the Browns, and the Titans, playing both tackle and guard. So once this signing occurred, of course, there's articles saying that the Niners may have found their new starting right tackle. No. Colton McKivitz is the starting right tackle. And like I've said on previous podcasts, it does not matter how much you or I like Colton McKivitz or other 49ers offensive linemen. What matters is that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch do like them, and they are running back the starting 5 from last year. If you want to say that Hubbard is competition for McKivitz, okay. If McKivitz has a terrible camp, gets beaten like a drum in joint practices or the preseason or in practice, and Hubbard shows out really well, is there the possibility that Hubbard starts? Sure, McKivitz could turn an ankle, get hurt. Always the possibility. But this was a depth signing, everybody. And even though that 69 grade from Pro Football Focus isn't fantastic from Hubbard's 9 starts last year with Tennessee, it was higher than Colton McKivitz. I think it was a high 40s, low 50s grade from Pro Football Focus. McKivitz more than likely isn't going anywhere. They gave him a $7 million extension. He acquitted himself better as the season went on and in the playoffs. Remember, the problem with the line wasn't the tackle spot, certainly not with Trent Williams, wasn't left guard, wasn't really center, it was right guard. Getting Spencer Burford out of there, putting John Feliciano in as starting right guard. And when Feliciano got hurt at the end of the Super Bowl, that's when you saw miscommunications. Now, we don't need to crucify Spencer Burford for, a missed assignment or miscommunication on one play, even though it was a play that the Niners could have scored a touchdown on, and who knows if the end of the game would have been any different. But what this actually means when you look at this, I think logically, and look at what the Niners did last year, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talk quite frequently about Jalen Moore being the swing tackle. And Jalen Moore really has only had to play on the left-hand side, or left tackle, because Trent Williams has gotten hurt the past couple seasons. So he hasn't had the opportunity to swing, so to speak, because he's had to fill in on the left side only. But what San Francisco did last year was they went with 2 tackles and then 2 interior players. This year, they may do the same. So if the 49ers go with 2 backup offensive linemen, Jalen Moore is a lock. I would assume Chris Hubbard has the leg up over Brandon Parker, who the 49ers signed in free agency from the Raiders. Again, if he has no guaranteed money, then he and Brandon Parker are on equal footing. But if they guaranteed Hubbard close to half of that contract, say $600,000, $700,000, then they're envisioning him as a backup tackle option, a very viable option. And if that's the case, again, forget about the starters. McKivitz is your starter until further notice. But if Moore and Hubbard are your outside tackle backups, that leaves 2 spots open for the interior line spots, both guards and center. Dominic Puni, the 3rd-round tackle out of Kansas, is guaranteed a spot. So that leaves either Ben Barch, Spencer Burford, Nick Zakiel, or rookie 6th-round guard, and who has also played some tackle, Jarrett Kingston, as options for the other interior line spot. They are not carrying 10 offensive linemen, guys. They are just not. There's only 8 needed to be active on game day, 5 starters, 3 backups. They carry 9. That means 1 offensive lineman is going to be inactive. That's fine. It would be stupid to have 2 offensive linemen inactive when you can keep a young player, a developmental player, not even just a young player, 6 players of any amount of NFL experience, like a Brandon Parker. Jarrett Kingston is a rookie. If he doesn't make the team, he could bounce down to the practice squad. And they're probably going to have another young player like a Drake Nugent at center, undrafted rookie free agent signing. I could see them having 2 or 3 offensive linemen on the practice squad that they could call up at a moment's notice if someone's injured after a game, in between weeks, to bring them up or elevate them 3 times until the player's healthy, and then they go back down to the practice squad. So this is going to be interesting to me if they keep 2 tackles. Again, is Jalen Moore literally a swing tackle, or is he a backup at left tackle? Based on last year and potentially based on this signing, because Chris Hubbard has played more right tackle than anywhere else on the line, they may feel better about going with 2 backup tackles, 2 backup guard players, and then remember, Feliciano is the de facto backup at center for Jake Brendel, even though Feliciano starts at right guard, meaning if Jake Brendel gets hurt, Feliciano moves to center, and then Dominic Puni and one of Ben Barch, Burford, Zakiel, or Jarrett Kingston would come in at right guard. So one other signing the 49ers made in the past week was defensive tackle Shaquille Brown. He was an undrafted free agent signed by the Titans last season, 6'3", 295, played collegiately at Troy. In total, 29 games, had 58 tackles, 4.5 sacks in his career, and 4 of those sacks, I believe, came in his final season at Troy. Apparently, Brown is a player that San Francisco liked last season, couldn't get him signed to the practice squad. Now, he's somebody that has the outside possibility of sticking on the active roster if San Francisco keeps 5 defensive tackles. In my very early roster projection, I had them keeping 5 DNs, but only 4 D tackles, being Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, and Kevin Givens. I think Shaquille Brown, or Shaquille, however you're pronouncing it, I apologize, is a practice squad candidate at best. And could, if he sticks on the practice squad and doesn't get claimed by another team, could find his way into the defensive tackle rotation in 2025 when Kevin Givens is a free agent, and he'll probably be on his way out. And Javon Hargrave could be on his way out also, just given the large cap hit he will have in 2025 and the 49ers needing to clear some cap space for Brandon Ayuk, for Brock Purdy, and then just any other free agents or re-signings to fill out their roster next season. So with these two signings, what does that mean? Who was released? So Ernest Brown, the fourth defensive end who spent time with the Rams among some other teams, was let go. I thought Brown had an opportunity, 6'5", 270, good-sized defensive end, to make the practice squad, which is still an outside possibility, depending on how everything shakes out in the next 3.5 months for the 49ers roster. But he is no longer with the team, and neither is Corey Luciano, an undrafted rookie free agent center from Cal last season, spent time on the practice squad. In my roster projection, I had Corey Luciano making the practice squad, and with this early of a release, while it's possible, just like with Ernest Brown, I don't really foresee it potentially happening. Actually, excuse me, I did not have Luciano making the practice squad. I had Drake Nugent, the rookie undrafted free agent out of Michigan, making the practice squad. And this is good news for Drake Nugent fans. And I know there are a lot of fans out there, a lot of fans of undrafted rookie free agents that I call training camp heroes. And I said in my last podcast, there is no need to have two safeties, two centers, either on the active roster, which they do not two pure centers anyway. They have Brendel and Feliciano as the backup, but it doesn't make sense to have two centers on the practice squad either. So Luciano is out. Drake Nugent still part of the 90-man roster, and I envision his path to the 2025 roster beginning on the practice squad this year. One additional signing, rookie 6th-round pick Jarrett Kingston, guard tackle out of USC, was signed. It's a 4-year deal worth $4.16 million. It included a $138,000 signing bonus and an $830,000 cap hit, although that wouldn't be the full hit if he is released, and that information is not available yet. I mentioned earlier that if the Niners go 2 offensive tackles as backups, like pure offensive tackles, that would leave only 2 spots open, with Dominic Puny, the 3rd-round rookie from Kansas, being guaranteed a spot, and then the next spot either going to Ben Barch, Spencer Buford, Nick Zakiel, or Jarrett Kingston. In my projection from last week, I had Ben Barch and Nick Zakiel making the team, but that was before Chris Hubbard was signed. And again, this is now under the guise of, if they keep 2 tackles and 2 interior players, there is the very real possibility that Jarrett Kingston doesn't make the team, and he winds up on the practice squad or is cut and is signed by another team. 6th-round picks, 7th-round picks, Tatum Bethune, the rookie linebacker out of Florida State, are not guaranteed anything. I think there's really things that the team likes about Ben Barch, to sign him from the Jaguars practice squad last year onto their 53-man roster, and then to sign him in the offseason. And, really, he didn't get a ton of guaranteed money. It was in the neighborhood of like $300,000 or $400,000. But they wanted to reserve his rights for the 2024 season until further notice, meaning until training camp and final cuts, should he make or not make the team. What Jarrett Kingston has on Ben Barch is a cheaper and longer contract. So if those 2 players are anywhere near even, I could see them giving the nod to Kingston. Buford has 2 years left on his deal. So does Nick Zakiel. But at this point, you've seen them for 2 years. I wouldn't say they've hit their ceiling yet, but I think that the offensive staff has a good idea of who Buford and Zakiel are. Ben Barch, probably you could say the same thing. He was an offensive lineman that was active during the Super Bowl, as was Buford. And I don't know if Zakiel was, or if it was the backup tackle that they had at the time. But here's what I have difficulty believing. If the Niners do keep 2 pure tackles as backups, leaving 2 interior spots open, again, they're going to carry 9 offensive linemen. They're not going to carry 10. Would Kyle Shanahan really go with 2 rookie linemen on the interior? Yeah, they got 2 veterans on the outside, but would he actually go with 2 rookies to man up either guard spot? I don't know. Again, Kyle has difficulty playing rookies. Got to prove your way onto the field, and rookies can do that, but rookies are still rookies. And no matter how much experience you have in college, it doesn't all totally translate to the NFL when week in and week out, you're going to be playing against bigger, stronger, faster, more talented players, in this case, D linemen, than probably Kingston or Puny ever saw in college. Something to think about as they go ahead. And, again, we're not even close. We're 3+ months out from final cuts. But as we've seen this past week, the roster's very fluid. Hubbard and Brown in, Luciano and Ernest Brown out. And more of that can come to come as we get through the spring and into early summer. And that, with Jared Kingston signing, that leaves only Ricky Pearsall, first-round pick receiver out of Florida, as the only unsigned rookie. He's going to sign. Listen, the NFL has slotted salaries, much like the NBA does. There's not much mystery in terms of what Ricky Pearsall is going to get paid. Pearsall was at rookie minicamp, fielding punts, running routes, and he wasn't under contract. But Jarrett Kingston was not out there, and he was also not under contract at the time. So nothing to worry about, but I think as we get into the summer, as we get into mandatory OTAs and training camp, and I'll probably be preaching this on multiple podcasts leading up into, more formalized practices, everybody needs to slow their roll with Ricky Pearsall. And by extension, 4th-round receiver Jacob Cowing out of Arizona. Not because they're rookies, although that is part of it. Right now, they are 4 and 5 on the wide receiver depth chart. I can't imagine someone like a Ronnie Bell or a Danny Gray. Chris Conley, I think, is going to be on the practice squad, really leapfrogging them. And I think they're going to want to get Pearsall involved and Cowing because he does bring something unique to the offense, and either one of them hopefully having punt return ability. But the way Kyle Shanahan draws up his offense, San Francisco used 11 personnel, meaning 1 running back, 1 tight end, and 3 receivers on only 38.8% of their offensive snaps last year. That's the second lowest percentage in the NFL and well below the league average of 62.1% of the time. Juwan Jennings is still on the team. Ayuk is not going anywhere. Debo is not going anywhere this year. And if those are your top 3 receivers, Pearsall and Cowing would be 4 and 5 at best. Does that mean the whole year Pearsall and Cowing are going to be 4 and 5? No. And I'm sure they're going to want to get Pearsall involved in the offense and Cowing to a lesser degree, given what their skill set is compared to a Juwan Jennings, big slot, right? Okay hands, big receiver, ferocious blocker, not great speed, not a fantastic route runner, not as twitchy as either of these 2 rookies. 19 receptions last year, guys. 27 was his, I believe, career high. He is not a high volume target, and it's hard to be when you have Ayuk and Debo and Kittle and McCaffrey. But how much Pearsall sees the field is going to be determined by personnel, giving the defense a different look, going from a big slot to a faster, better route running slot, better hands. And Jacob Cowing played a lot of games in college, I think over 50, and the probably the twitchiest athlete they have on offense. But you may not see these receivers a ton. So when people start projecting, Ricky Pearsall is going to go for, 500 or 600 yards. No, he's not, unless somebody gets hurt. If Ricky Pearsall is in the running for Offensive Rookie in the Year, that means Debo or Ayuk or both got hurt, and Pearsall winds up becoming the number one wide receiver option. And if that's the case, then the season is probably not going as well as all of us are hoping for. But it doesn't stop at 3 wide. San Francisco last year ran 0 plays, 0, in which they had 4 or 5 pure wide receivers on the field. Why is that? Because they flex McCaffrey out as a receiver, because sometimes they'll bring in Juice as a receiver for a matchup problem with a linebacker. You bring in 4 or 5 receivers, you're going to have 5 or 6 pure corners in coverage. And Kyle Shanahan likes to manipulate matchups with his personnel. Do I think they're going to get 4 wide receivers on the field this year? Yes, because this is a better wide receiver core than last year, and probably the best wide receiver core that Kyle has had in his time here. And that is with the addition of 2 rookies as your number 4 and number 5. So I'm not ready to make a prediction on what Ricky Pearsall is going to do. I just think it's not going to be near what people are thinking or hoping or christening the second coming of God knows what. Trick plays for either, reverses, again, special teams. But I think the way Kyle has historically used personnel and 3 wide receivers and not used 4 or 5 wide receivers, even if it changes because of who he has now, it's not going to change wholesale. It's going to be sprinkled in. Now, some notes from Pro Football Focus before we get into one other segment, then we will get into the schedule. So Pro Football Focus, the Niners have 2 of the top-ranked units in the NFL. Linebacker, no surprise, and that's really with a healthy Dre Greenlaw, and he will be healthy by his own admission sometime this year, whether it's week 4, 6, 8, 10. He's not rushing back until he feels 100%, and nor would, Lynch or Shanahan or Sorenstam or anybody on the coaching staff rush him back unnecessarily. So it makes sense. And then behind them, or in addition to them, bringing in Devondre Campbell, Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, Winters and Graham, they have some depth. They have some veterans. They have some young players. Solid linebacker group, but it's really carried, obviously, by the top 2. And the other position is tight end. Kittle had a great year, went over 1,000 yards, became really a targeting favorite of Brock Purdy outside of the Super Bowl. He only had 3 targets. But then again, their starting receivers only had 3 receptions each, so you got to credit the Chiefs' defense there. The number 1 tight end group in the NFL. And can you imagine if Kittle had any help? Had any absolute receiving help? Anybody that could even sniff as a wide receiver 2, a viable receiving option as a wide receiver 2? Is it going to be Eric Saubert? Is it going to be Cam Latu? Is it going to be Braden Willis? I don't think Jake Tongs makes the team, and I don't think Mason Pline makes the team. The rookie out of Furman. One of those 2 will be on the practice squad. Kittle, as people are saying, well, Kittle needs to be, he's only going to have another, year or 2 left before he starts breaking down. He's 4 years younger than Travis Kelce, and Travis Kelce just got a contract extension. Now, Kelce is used differently than Kittle, not used as a blocker as much, and that maybe could be Kittle's evolution over time, as if Saubert or Latu or Willis wound up becoming, a high-end blocker or an above-average blocker. That can maybe cause Kittle to be be put into more of a Travis Kelce type role, where they could split him out as a slot receiver, right? He could be maybe receiver number 4, but split out instead of inline block. And there's no harm in holding a block for a second or 2 or releasing, but the amount of time that Kittle is in as basically your 6th offensive lineman will have to decrease over time if you want to increase his longevity in the league. And Pro Football Focus, lastly, did note a potential 49ers breakout candidate, and it was defensive end Drake Jackson. So defensive end number 4 on your roster, behind Bosa, Leonard Floyd, and now Yetur Gross-Matos is a potential breakout candidate. And hell, the way he's ended the last 2 seasons on IR, he may be DN5 behind Robert Beal. Jackson had a great start to last season, 3 sacks week 1 at Pittsburgh. No other sacks the rest of the way. He was placed on IR with a knee injury for which he had surgery on November 11th. Or was placed on IR on November 11th, had surgery shortly thereafter. In total, 14 QB pressures on 155 pass rush snaps. He had an overall defensive grade of 62.6 and his run grade of 39.6, run defense grade, was the lowest on the team. So they have to figure out, too, is Drake Jackson, what's the body type going to be? Remember last year he said he was heavier at USC, then he dropped weight to get faster, was in like the low 360s, high 350s, low 360s his rookie year, put good weight back on, about another 10 pounds, so he was around 370. Do they want him more as, he wouldn't really be a base defensive end because that's going to be Leonard Floyd, but someone that can hold the edge, more of a run-stopping defensive end, someone that if he puts on a little, keeps that 270-ish frame, could play inside on pass rush downs, much like, Gross-Matos is envisioned doing. They don't have necessarily that speed edge opposite of Bosa. It could be Leonard Floyd. He's 31, 32. Could be Robert Beal. He has a fast, get off as time at the combine. Didn't really get much playing time last year. They have an assortment of DNs. They just need to find the right mix. And Leonard Floyd, with at least 9 sacks the past, 3 or 4 years, the best compliment that Bosa has had in his time here. But Drake Jackson, all right, potential breakout candidate. Great. I mean, he's been hurt. He was on IR since, mid-November. Didn't have a sack since beginning of September. Okay. I guess he can build upon that. And we shall see. Now, last, before we get to the schedule, a lot of discussion about Jared Goff's extension with the Lions, 4 years, $212 million, which is a $53 million average annual value. He did get $170 million guaranteed. And the discussion was, well, if he got that, what's Purdy going to get? Goff and Purdy have each been to a Super Bowl. Goff and Purdy have each been to an additional NFC Championship game. Purdy's younger. Now, Goff's average of 53 is number 2 in the league behind Joe Burrow, who has a $55 million average annual value. Then you have Goff. Then it's Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. Again, don't get caught up in the average annual value. There's inflated numbers on the back end that the quarterback will never see. That drives up the value. And it's probably for everyone, maybe $3 to $7 million less annually per year when that fake money is taken into account. So automatically now, does that mean Purdy's going to get more? He should. If people want to argue in Detroit that Goff's a better player, then, well, why was Brock Purdy an MVP candidate and Goff wasn't? Goff had a really good season. He did. But the way things are going, it's not just Purdy that's due for an extension after this year. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Tua, and Dak. And I can't, there's obviously the possibility that Dak goes somewhere else, especially say if the Cowboys really flame out again, wild card round, or if for some reason they don't make the playoffs altogether, I could see them moving on from Dak. And hey, maybe they give Trey Lance a really cheap shot at being a starting quarterback. But Dak's on the Cowboys books in 2025 for like $40+ million. And I can't imagine that they would eat that to have him not play. So the path of least financial resistance in a way is to re-sign Dak. It's just, what is he going to make? Are any of these quarterbacks going to command $60 million or more annually? What's Trevor Lawrence shown so far? Jordan Love didn't do anything until last year. It had a nice season. Tua, is he a product? If Brock Purdy's a product of the weapons he has and Kyle Shanahan's system, which I don't believe, got to say the same about Tua, right? Mike McDaniel coming off of the Shanahan tree, bringing in Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, brought in OBJ. They have a stable of running backs. I don't know what he's ultimately worth, and the same for Prescott. And then there's this discussion too of, would Purdy take less? Now, take less means less than what? Is it less than Goff, less than Dak, less than Burrow? Like, I don't know what that exactly means, but his market value based on Goff's contract now is in the 50s. Anybody that thought, well, yeah, Brock Purdy's like a Daniel Jones, which is laughable. He's probably worth around, $40 to $45 million a year. The market's the market, guys. The market's saying if this is what a Goff is worth and a Trevor Lawrence, who has one playoff win and one playoff appearance, and Jordan Love, right now, one playoff win, one playoff appearance. Tua hasn't won a playoff game. Dak has a couple playoff wins. If you're Purdy, why would you take less, right? Has any other quarterback in the last 20 years taken less other than Tom Brady? And there's two reasons for that. One, Giselle, who he was married to at the time, was making more than him. So it wasn't a money thing. It was not a money thing at all. But another part of it is Tom Brady is up there with Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods when he wasn't a shell of his former self in terms of like being the ultimate competitor. The I will rip your head off, I will slap your mother in the face if I need to get a win. So financially, if he was able to take less, so the Patriots were able to better the team around him, which they really didn't do all that much offensively. It was more of a defensive thing. Except for that one year, what was it, 2007, when they had Dante Stallworth and Randy Moss, and I don't know if Wes Welker was part of that team, I can't recall going back. He took less because he wanted to win. He had a burning passion. Once he started winning, he wanted to keep winning. And the way to do that, he realized, was not to top out or max out his contract. Could Purdy have some of that in him? Maybe. He could also look at it as crap. I was a 7th round pick. I'm in a way lucky to be on the field because 2 quarterbacks in front of me had to get hurt. I did take advantage of my opportunity. I'm a self-made quarterback in a way. Nothing was handed to me. I deserve 55, 57, what, $50 plus million annually a year, $175, $180 million guaranteed, whatever it may be. Just because Purdy's humble and his clothes look like they come from a Kohl's catalog and all that stuff doesn't mean he's not going to want to take what he's worth. But if this guy is all about winning, he could live off of $48 million instead of 53 per year. $175 million guaranteed instead of 180. But it's always the quarterback, right? It's always the quarterback being asked to take less. They are making the most on the team. I get it. Did Nick Bosa take less? Did Fred Warner take less? Did Debo take less? Will Ayuk take less? Did any receiver? Is Justin Jefferson going to take less? Is Jamar Chase? Did Amon-Ra St. Brown, who just got paid, take less? Did A.J. Brown? Nobody takes less. But it's asked of the quarterback. Yes, because they're making the most. They're making, in some instances, twice as much or 1.5 times as much as the highest paid, receiver on your team. So you could say, well, what's, 50 million compared to 53 or 48 compared to 52? It's not your money. I think players that want to win, it shouldn't just be the quarterback. If you want to come to San Francisco or any team that wants to perennially win, then this is never going to happen, right? Everybody should take a little bit less. You're coming to a win. Ayuk, you want to stay with us? Yeah, I know you think you're worth $29 million a year. Let's keep the band together. Let's keep winning. And that means $27 million a year. He's not going to say yes to that. You need a team that's got that bought-in mentality that, we're gonna go for it for 5 years. 4 or 5 years. As long as I'm here, whatever money that I'm not getting paid and anybody that you're bringing in has got to have that mentality. Win above all else. Winning first, salary and contract second. Unfortunately for football, careers are usually so short that players want and deserve to get as much money as possible. We're 10 months away from Purdy getting paid. He's going to get paid what the market dictates. And if he takes less and it's on him, then I think you're going to see his priorities, his competitive fire, his wanting to win. And he knows that his salary, much like Bosa's and Debo's and Ayuk's and Trent Williams and Fred Warner's, All these big end salaries are part of the equation for that. So I don't fault Purdy, or I don't think about it any which way. But Goff was the latest marker on the contract map, the latest landmark that is just going to get hurdled. And just a matter of, how far, does Purdy hurdle it, and by how far does he surpass it financially? So that leaves us with the 2024 schedule. Anybody that's listening, you guys went through the schedule already. You know who the 49ers are playing, and you have your own thoughts on the number of wins the Niners are going to have. I'm sure we're going to go through game by game briefly. I don't want to belabor this too much, but I want to start out with the over-unders, and this is through ESPN Bet, but BetMGM, Caesars, like these over-unders are pretty consistent across the board. So this year, the NFC West over-unders in terms of wins, San Francisco at 11.5, Rams at 8.5, Seattle at 7.5, and the Cardinals at 6.5. So they're thinking the Niners are going to be right around where they were last year. Rams won 10 games, so they're seeing the Rams taking a bit of a step back. I'm not totally sure I agree with that. Seattle won, 8 games last year, so 7.5 is right around there. And the Cardinals, 6.5. They're not too talented of a team. The way I'm looking at this, so the Niners have 8 road games, 9 home games. I think they're going to lose, say, between 2 and 4 road games, between 1 and 3 home games. That's just the way I think it's going to play out. They've been a very good road team lately, but they do have some tough matchups on the road this season. San Francisco did receive 6 primetime games, 2 each on Thursday night on Amazon, Sunday night on NBC, and Monday night on ESPN. Their schedule contains 9 games against playoff teams. That includes the Rams twice. And 4, and a lot's being made about this. We'll see if it matters. 4 games against teams coming off their bye week. That is the most in the league. Handful of teams with 3, 2, good number of teams with 1, and a good number of teams with none. Now, barring any long-term catastrophic injuries to major players, obviously a Purdy, one of their receivers, McCaffrey, Bosa, Charvarius Ward, Fred Warner, I'm not saying all of them, but hell, even one of them, basically Purdy, could sink the season. Barring anything like that, the absolute floor for this team is 11-7. And that might be low, but let's just go with 11-7. There's too much talent on this team to lose more than 7 games. Way too much talent. And if the ball bounces right and things go extremely well for San Francisco, not complete at every single turn, they're not going undefeated, but I think if things go as well as they possibly could for San Francisco, their ceiling is 14-3. So somewhere between 10-7 and 14-3 is where I think San Francisco is going to end up. So let's go through game by game briefly. They open up week 1 at home Monday night against the New York Jets. San Francisco has opened up as a 5.5-point favorite. This is a tone-setting game for either team. For San Francisco, to prove that at least in week 1, there is no Super Bowl hangover against a team with a very good defense, against a defensive-minded head coach that they are very familiar with in Robert Saleh, and against a quarterback that they have seen quite a bit when he was with the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, now healthy, or getting healthy, at least this is May, getting healthy with the New York Jets. They brought in Mike Williams at receiver from the Chargers. He may not be back in time recovering from a torn ACL. They drafted Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, who is, a lot of people saying, a Debo clone. And how much time will Rodgers really have with his offense? Like legitimate time. Like there's going to be practices. There's going to be joint practices. There's 3 preseason games. I can't imagine Rodgers really playing much or at all in any of those games. And as the season starts, usually, that first 2 to 4 games are kind of sloppy on average. Defenses are generally ahead of offenses at that point in the season. Jets have a very good defense. Niners should be having a very good defense. Jets secondary with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. They may look at Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, look at the Super Bowl and say, hey, let's play as much man as we can. Have Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and Jennings and Pearsall and McCaffrey, whatever. Prove that they could beat man, because they didn't prove that they could beat it much against Kansas City. Purdy was tearing up the zone, and Steve Spagnuolo went more to man, and that's how they were able to slow San Francisco down. All that being said, I think the continuity, assuming there's obviously no major injuries in training camp or the preseason, that Purdy's going to have with this offense that is essentially the same team that they're running back, San Francisco beats the Jets week 1. Week 2, the Niners are at the Vikings. This is the scene of Brock Purdy's 2-interception performance last year on Monday Night Football. This is a Vikings team that offensively is dangerous with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison his second year, TJ Hawkinson at tight end, Aaron Jones came over from the Packers at running back. But will it be Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy at quarterback? And will it honestly matter? Darnold is who he is. JJ McCarthy, a rookie, would be at best getting his second career start. And the Vikings do have a very opportunistic defense that gave San Francisco issues last season. But again, remember, that was a game without Trent Williams and without Deebo Samuel, for what that's worth. And Purdy did throw 2 interceptions on back-to-back drives, one to end the game. I think no Cousins. I'm not going to say the Niners are going to have no problem, but they will get the win at Minnesota. Week 3, the Niners are at the Rams, which is generally, almost always a home game type of feel for San Francisco. The Rams are going to be a feisty team. That's the word I used last year. I would go above the Rams, 8.5 wins, even if they get to 9. I think, 9-8. It's not a great season, but, not awful either. They're going to hover around 10 wins. Rams played them tough last year in Los Angeles. They won in San Francisco week 18 in a game that didn't matter, that featured Sam Darnold against Carson Wentz. Brock Purdy has not lost to a divisional foe yet, and it will not start here. I think a good game Rams team will put up a nice fight, but San Francisco will extend to 3-0. The Niners go home for the Patriots in week 4. Will it be Drake May, the rookie out of North Carolina? Will it be veteran backup who might be the starter, Jacoby Brissett for New England? It will not matter. New England's defense may keep them in the game in the first half, but offensively they are not going to have nearly enough to stick with San Francisco. Niners are 4-0. They stay home week 5, hosting the Cardinals. Kyler Murray, like he always does, will give the defensive line and the defense some problems with his mobility, but Arizona does not have enough, even with Marvin Harrison as a rookie. This is Marvin Harrison Jr., his 5th game. They are not going to be able to stay with San Francisco. The Niners move to 5-0, which leads them to a week 6 matchup at Seattle on Thursday Night Football, where Geno Smith, the past couple of years, has played poorly against the 49ers. But Mike McDonald, the new head coach, former Ravens defensive coordinator, will play the Niners like the Chiefs did. They will play a lot of man because they have the personnel to do it, between Tariq Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant, if he wins the nickelback spot. The Seahawks are by and large kind of running the same team back. They did have, I think, a nice draft and brought in some nice free agent pieces to bulk up maybe the interior of that defensive line. I am always, I think, more wary of the Seahawks than the vast majority of 49er fans are. And it's probably being scarred from the early 2010s with Russell Wilson and the Legion of Boom, and the Niners really struggling there for a while. They've won, their last 2 games in Seattle. I think the last 4 overall. I might be wrong on that. But a night game early enough in the season where if the Niners are coming in 5-0, they were 5-0 last year before they wound up losing 3 straight. I think this is where San Francisco gets their first loss. I think Mike McDonald will have that defense ready to slow down San Francisco, maybe get a turnover or two, and do enough so Geno Smith does not have to win the game on his arm. They're going to keep it on the ground with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I think Seattle gets the win, and this leads San Francisco into their Super Bowl rematch, Week 7 at home against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are on, actually it's a 4-game winning streak against San Francisco if you want to count 2018, where the Niners went to Kansas City, lost, and that was the game where Jimmy tore his ACL. But, you know, the better iteration of the 49ers, 3 straight losses, the 2019 Super Bowl, 2022 in San Francisco, the week after McCaffrey was traded for and joined the team, and obviously last year in the Super Bowl. And I am likening this to the early 90s, 1992 to 1993, where the Niners lost 3 straight times to Dallas. 92 in the conference championship game in San Francisco. 93, the next year they went to Dallas and lost in the regular season by 9. And then that season, they went back to Dallas in the conference championship game and wound up getting thumped 38-21. 1994 rolls around. New players are brought in, Ken Norton, Gary Plummer, Lee Woodall at linebacker. Dion comes over, obviously makes the biggest difference at cornerback. Bryant Young in the draft, William Floyd in the draft. San Francisco was ready, hosted Dallas in the regular season, won that game 21-14. Merton Hanks having 2 interceptions, and then hosting Dallas in the championship game, getting out to a 21-0 lead and beating Dallas 38-28 en route to their 5th Super Bowl victory over San Diego. That Dallas NFC championship game in 94 is still the biggest game, the biggest feeling 49er game of my life. I've been around long enough to have watched and comprehended the Niner Dolphins Super Bowl, against the Bengals, against the Broncos, obviously the Ravens, the Chargers, Ravens, all the way through. But the feel that if you weren't, and I see some very young content creators talking about this who weren't alive or were basically sucking on tits at that point, really had no idea how big that was, how big that game was. I went to a party at a friend's house. There was about a dozen people there. Super Bowl, nobody cared about. If you were a Niner fan, there's not many Niners or Charger fans in New Jersey. But even previous years, Bills, Cowboys, Bills, Cowboys again, obviously the previous year. But, how big that game was for everybody. And the only equivalent really is the Patriots, Colts playoff games in the 2000s and 2010s between Brady and Manning, because the Niners and Cowboys were built so similarly. Dallas obviously having the better offensive line and the better, kind of running back, but wanting to play defense, efficient quarterbacks. 1994 was so important for San Francisco to get that regular season win. And that was before DirecTV. That was me. I remember watching the ticker at the bottom of the screen, because that was obviously a 4:00 game here in New Jersey, but 1:00 in San Francisco, watching the score change, then eventually, it was 21-7 San Francisco. Dallas got a touchdown to make it 21-14, and I think Merton Hanks wound up picking off Aikman twice, but once late in the game to seal the victory. And that game, in terms of tiebreakers, helped the 49ers get home field advantage against the Cowboys. Now, long story short, that game was important to San Francisco to prove that they could beat Dallas in the playoffs. Not to say, if they would have lost that game, they would have had to go to Dallas instead. Who knows how that would have changed. But it was a mental confidence boost that they could play with and beat Dallas at some point and then replicate it in the NFC Championship game. That's how this game feels with Kansas City. 3 straight losses, 2 in the playoffs, like to Dallas. Those playoff losses were Super Bowl games versus NFC Championship games against Dallas. This time, the Chiefs do not have L'Jarius Sneed at cornerback. We'll see if Steve Spagnuolo would employ the same type of defensive approach. They lost Marquez Valdez-Scantling, not a big loss. They did bring in Hollywood Brown and rookie receiver Xavier Worthy out of Texas. Still have Kelsey, still have Mahomes, still have Isaiah Pacheco. Big game for the 49ers moving forward. But I'm going to be of the opinion, like I was last year when the Niners went to Philadelphia, I'm not going to pick you until you prove you can beat them. I picked San Francisco to beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I thought the Niners had a really good chance with their offense, and the defense under Steve Wilks played well enough. A couple bonehead things in the fourth quarter and overtime, things that he called, but played well enough. Patrick Mahomes had one touchdown in regulation, then all field goals, and one touchdown in overtime. I think Kansas City, I'm not going to say that they're going to be the better team at that point or whatever, but they're the champs until they're knocked off. Can San Francisco do it? Absolutely. But I'm not picking it. So right now, May 16th of 2024, I'm going to take the Chiefs, leaving the Niners at 5-2, going into a Sunday night game again at home against Dallas. Dallas has lost some talent overall. They've lost it on the offensive and defensive lines. Offensive line specifically, they lost their center, Tyler Biadasz, and Tyron Smith at tackle went to Dallas. Dallas is just, I don't think, as good or as talented a team as maybe the national media believes, but certainly not as good as a team as their fans believe. I don't think the Niners thump them the way they did in 2023, but they will get the win. They will enter the bye at 6-2, which not too bad at all. Their bye is week 9. They come out of the bye. They go to Tampa Bay. I think overall the Bucs had a really nice year. Made a wild card, beat Philadelphia at home in their wild card round, went to Detroit, was really game against the Lions. Baker Mayfield earned a nice contract, but I think overall Mayfield and the Bucs kind of overperformed last year, and I think they take maybe a step back, a win or two back this year. It feels like this is a game that they are just overmatched and outclassed against San Francisco. The Niners will get the win. Niners go home to Seattle home against Seattle week 11, a revenge game for that loss on Thursday Night Football a couple weeks prior. As I said, Geno plays poorly against San Francisco. I think here he will play more poorly than he did at home in Seattle. San Francisco will get the win. Week 12 at Green Bay. This is a 1 o'clock start. It actually might be even a 1 o'clock Eastern start, so it might be a 12:25 start in Green Bay if there's a 1 hour time difference. I think there is. This is Thanksgiving weekend. It's a day game, so hopefully weather will not be that much of a factor. Green Bay behind Jordan Love is a young and ascending team. They're going to see this as a revenge game. Brought in Josh Jacobs at running back, taking the place of Aaron Jones. They still they're bringing back most of the defense that they had last year. I think this is a game where, and Green Bay was not the better team in the playoffs. And far too little is being made of Jordan Love choking his ass off in the fourth quarter, in the second half, throwing 2 interceptions, both to Dre Greenlaw. One, which was a terrible decision at the end of the game, running to his right, throwing back across his body and getting picked off near midfield by Greenlaw. I think the fact that this is in Green Bay, that the Packers will get the win. Niners have to then travel to Buffalo for a Sunday night game, December 1st. So Buffalo, nighttime, beginning of December. Weather, probably a factor. We're not talking about blizzard, but cold, right? Should definitely be cold. Now, this is a different Bills team. On defense, there's no Tre'Davious White. On offense, there's no Stephon Diggs. They did bring in receiver-wise. They're trying to make up for Stephon Diggs' production with quantity. So Curtis Samuel came aboard. Marquez Valdez-Scantling from the Chiefs. KJ Hamler from the Browns. Chase Claypool, which I don't even think was on a team last year. They have Khalil Shakir, Gabe Davis, their number 2 receiver, gone also. This is going to be a different look in Buffalo. But are they going to be a team that's going to be committed to the run as much as they were in the second half of last season? They might be. And Josh Allen, obviously, a top 5 quarterback in the league, can beat you throwing and running. I think this is a game where, again, home field advantage, I think, is going to be a tilt, and San Francisco loses. And then if this does happen where the Niners lose at the Packers and at the Bills, here come the naysayers. San Francisco can't beat a good team. San Francisco can't win on the road. What's with the 49ers? Blah, blah, blah. So, but at that point, let's remember the Niners, after week 13, would be 8-4. The sky is not falling. And they go home for the Bears in week 14. They're not losing to a Caleb Williams, a rookie-led team, even though it is more than halfway through the season. So Williams will have some experience, and he does have weapons, and DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze that they drafted from Washington in the draft, and they can play some defense, but the Niners will not lose that game 9-4. They'll versus the Rams next week at home, Thursday Night Football. They'll beat the Rams again. That's what they do, especially at home. And since this game matters at home, the Niners are going to take it seriously. Unlike last year's Week 18 game, they will beat the Rams to go to 10-4. Week 16 at Miami. Now, Miami's defense on the whole, outside of their corners, Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard, can be a liability. They can get pushed around. They can get bullied. They're not a powerful team. They're definitely a finesse team and have a whole lot of speed. But defensively, they could be bullied. But even though the defense is a liability, their offense has Tua, running back, Mostert, and Wilson. Achane, who had a nice rookie season before he got hurt. They drafted Jalen Wright, an explosive running back out of Tennessee. And at receiver, it's Hill, it's Waddle, it's OBJ coming over, and Jonnu Smith was a nice tight end addition from the Falcons. A lot of weapons. This could be a high-scoring game for both teams. This may be one where you take the over, or maybe does San Francisco slow it down and try to be a ball control type of game and kind of run it down their throats with Mitchell and McCaffrey, and if they're going to give at that point Isaac Guerrero any run. But I'm going to see this as a loss. I think Miami, if this is a high-scoring shootout type of game, we'll see if the Niners secondary, whatever the 5 or 6 corners that make the team, can hang and hold with the Dolphins' passing game. I have Miami getting the win here. Last 2 weeks of the season, Monday Night Football NFC Championship game rematch against the Lions. This will be for playoff seeding and possibly the number 1 seed overall. Coming off of a loss, San Francisco cannot come out flat like they did in both playoff games, but especially against Detroit. Detroit made some defensive additions. I think they drafted 1, if not 2, cornerbacks that will be, hopefully for them, seasoned by this point. Goff and the offense should be performing at a clip close to what they did last year. But San Francisco, with their defensive additions, if their D-line can gel and get home the way that we are hoping that they could, bringing in Floyd, bringing in Gross Matos, having Collins and Elliott on the interior, they need to rattle Goff. You saw when the Lions went for it on 4th down twice, once in particular, it was pressure flushing Goff out to his right, where he basically spiked the ball into the ground, threw it about 3 yards in front of the intended receiver. I think San Francisco flexes here and shows that the second half of the NFC Championship game wasn't a fluke and that they just are a superior team to the Lions. And last week of the season, week 18 at Arizona, this is a good game. Now, Arizona will be out of the playoffs by week 8. But this leads the Cardinals to being a dangerous team. It's a good game to end the season on if it's a must-win for San Francisco. 1, it's an inferior opponent, and 2, it's a divisional game and an NFC game. So 3 reasons why. San Francisco will come out and take care of business and beat Arizona. So I have San Francisco at 12-5, just like they were last year. They should be a top 1 or 2 seed in the NFC. A 3 seed, if they win their division, they're a 3 seed at the worst. If they drop to, say, an 11 and 11-6. Or if they bottom out and they're 10-7, you can maybe see them as potentially, a 3 seed. I can't imagine them being the worst division champ in the NFC. Now, as the season starts, guys, we're all curious. What is Nick Sorenstam going to bring? How is Brandon Staley's role of basically overseer, working with the secondary, working with the linebackers some, helping to devise game plans? It is going to be Nick Sorenstam calling the plays, and he will be calling them from the field. I've said before on previous podcasts, and I'm going to say it again, there could be a situation, what I laid out, 12 wins, 5 losses, there's probably going to be a game San Francisco wins that I have as a loss, and there's probably going to be a game that they lose that I have as a win. I don't think a lot of people saw them losing to the Vikings last year, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of fans had them beating Philadelphia, but that was kind of a coin flip game in a way. Then the Niners broke the Eagles, and the Eagles just crapped on themselves the rest of the season. So it's fluid. There's going to be variability. I think the offense is going to perform. They should be a top 3 offense in the league. We'll see how McCaffrey gets spelled with Mitchell, Mason, Garendo. If Cody Schrader winds up making the roster, which I don't think he will. But what I want to see from the team is an attacking mentality. I think Kyle Shanahan offensively, even though he does some head-scratching stuff at times, I think has that ability and showcases that ability more than the defensive staff has, especially Steve Wilks last year. The most aggressive he got, stupidly, was against the Vikings at the end of the half, where he sent a 0 blitz, and Jordan Addison was one-on-one with Charvarius Ward, wound up scoring a touchdown, and in a way you could say was the difference in that game. I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it. I don't think in every podcast, or else you guys are just going to start tuning me out. But I want to see, if they don't feel like they have the players to play man up like the Ravens do or the Chiefs do, or I can see the Seahawks do, that's okay. I'm not saying, being aggressive is, playing press man, 70% of the time. That's not it. But what I keep coming back to is they have enough Pro Bowlers, All Pros, or difference makers on every level of the defense. Bosa, Hargrave, Floyd. At linebacker, Warner, Greenlaw when he's healthy, which probably won't be until the midway point, but Devondre Campbell, very good player. Charvarius Ward had a very good season at corner, outside corner. Is Lenore going to be inside or outside? Who's going to man that spot? Is it going to be Yadam or Rock Yassin or Renardo Green, the rookie? And safety, Jair Brown had a nice rookie year that we can build on. And if Talanoa Hufanga is healthy, fully healthy from the ACL, he should be a difference maker, especially in run support. Enough talent on the defense that I want to see them really playing downhill. I want to really see them enforce their will, dictate in some ways what the offenses can and cannot do. All defensive coordinators say this. I think Nick Sorenstam says, they want to play fast and violent. And Robert Saleh was all gas, no brakes. All gas, no brakes. Robert Saleh's defense from 2019, remember, guys, had the same exact number of sacks as the 49er defense last year under Steve Wilks. It's play calling, it's execution, it's timely blitzes, it's putting your best players in the best position to make big-time plays. But, you can have a great defensive coordinator. Let's go back to say like Bill Belichick, when in the early years of the Patriot dynasty, didn't have a ton of stars. Had some, but didn't have a ton. But the collective whole was better than the individual parts. But when San Francisco's individual parts on defense are this good, then the whole should be really goddamn good. The whole should be, we're not saying 85 Bears good or 2,000 Ravens good or 2012 Seahawks good, but it should be better than what it's shown. It should be more of a bully, more of a force than what it's been. And if that's something that Nick Sorenstam can, it's a mindset that you have to instill, right? But it's also how you are going to play and call the game. There is that line that I always keep saying between reckless and stupid, and you have to toe it. But there's just like on offense, there's too much talent, too many elite or superior or highly above average players on defense for them not to look at the other, to line up and look at the other side of the ball, the offense are playing, and have the mentality of, we're going to run you bitches into the ground today. You ain't doing what you think you're doing on us. And they feel, maybe it's coming off of Steve Wilks playing soft, playing 10 yards off or 15 yards off on 3rd and 10. I want to see more of I want to see teams earn it more. And if a team earns it on offense, you tip your cap. Nice throw, nice call, nice catch, nice run, nice play design, whatever it is. Want to see them earn it. You got the athletes, you got the talent to contest quite a bit. And I just want to see more of that this upcoming season. So that's going to conclude the 49ers podcast for today. Like I mentioned, no plus content today, but we will have some next week. Next week's podcast will drop probably Tuesday or Wednesday, since I'm releasing this one on Thursday. We'll go over anything new and timely for San Francisco, plus some definite plus content that I want to share with you guys. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Exciting time in the NFL with the schedule release, with the release of, the primetime games, the international games, the WNBA starting, so playoffs still for, the NBA and NHL, UFL on for whoever's watching that. And obviously things warming up. I keep saying that the last couple weeks, warming up in the Northeast. Now we're into low 70s, which for me is t-shirt and short weather. Just makes everybody and puts everybody in a better mood. So a lot to chew on with the schedule. We'll see what, comes of the next, close to a week before we talk again in terms of Niners news and notes. But again, thank you for listening. Whatever you're doing, until we speak again, always stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. Talk soon. Take care.